As an adult, I've now grown over most of the things that I liked as a child. However, Samurai Champloo is not one of them. I have been wanting to make this video for so long, but I kept putting myself off thinking I wouldn't do it justice, blah 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 blah. But before I get into it, you might be wondering, why am I all covered in sunflowers? Did I really just buy a whole outfit just to make this one video? Yes, I did. This top, it's got sunflowers all over it, as well as this headband. Not sure if you can even see. It's all from Shane. I know, I'm sorry. Now, before I explain myself, I have to say, spoiler alert, if you're someone who is currently watching this show or are wanting to watch it and don't want things to be spoiled, then click off right now. But even if you haven't watched this show or have no idea what I'm talking about, you can still stick around because in this video I'll provide a brief overview of the plot, the characters, the setting and everything. But ideally you would be better off having watched this show beforehand because I will be zooming into some scenes that I think are important and try to analyze them from different perspectives. So, Samurai Champloo is an anime TV series consisting of 26 episodes directed by Shinichiro Watanabe that aired between 2004 to 2005. It is set during the Edo period of Japan between 1603 to 1867, but is by no means an accurate historical portrayal of that time. The show gives a disclaimer and even jokes about it in the first episode. Edo period of Japan was characterized by economic growth, strict social order, and isolationism. So a breeding ground for corruption and authoritarian politics. Due to the strict social order that allowed for little to no personal freedom, it denied its people individuality and the right to freedom of speech. Those going against the social order, even if that involves standing up for the oppressed, are not only shunned upon, but discouraged to do so.
Don't. You might not like it, but just let it go.
The word Champloo comes from Okinawan term Champloo, meaning stirred up or mixed together. This is shown through anachronism of references to contemporary hip-hop mixed with the old-fashioned medieval era of Japan, whether it be through record scratching to switch between different storylines, using breakdancing moves to fight, or the use of hip-hop as background music throughout the show. However, the music and the setting were not the only dichotomies that were present in this show, as Samurai Champloo goes on to present two of the core dichotomies of human nature, Apollonian and Dionysian. According to German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, the two fundamental forces of human nature are order and logic versus chaos and irrationality. Nietzsche emblems these two forces through the Greek gods of Apollo, who is the god of the sun, truth, light, logic and order, and Dionysus, who is the god of wine, festivals and madness. While at the first glance these forces may seem opposing to each other, but Nietzsche's whole point is that you need to have a balance between both the Apollonian and the Dionysian drives to create art or existence as a whole that is meaningful. But taking a step back from the metaphysics of human nature, in fictional media, the dichotomous trope of Apollonian and Dionysian is very common. It can be seen in cartoons, movies, pretty much every cop movie, especially the ones with Jackie Chan. But for the sake of this video, we'll stick to anime. In anime, especially Shounen Anime, this trope is often made apparent through not just the characteristics of the protagonist, but the costumes and outfits they are presented in. Usually the characters representing Dionysus are portrayed as hot-headed, erratic, and are shown wearing warmer colors of red, orange, and yellow, in contrast to their Apollonian counterpart, who wears cooler colors like blue, green, or grays, in accordance to their stoic, calm, distant nature. Most of the time, they also follow the enemies to friends trope. Speaking of which, let's introduce our characters. Our first protagonist is a vagrant outlaw named Mugen, who is your stereotypical Dionysian. He is hot-headed and erratic, has no restraint or self-control. He will fight anything or anyone who stands in his way just because he can. All he lives for is the adrenaline of life in form of fights, food, and...
Look! A naked woman!
Mugen portrays most of the hip-hop influence that are presented in this show, as Watanabe once said in one of his interviews. When I came up with the character of Mugen, I heard hip-hop at the same time, and I thought he was going to be a rapper samurai. And that's really who Mugen is to the core. The animation of Mugen's fighting style was referenced through a gymnastic footage alongside incorporating breakdancing moves. Throughout the show, the hip-hop influence can be clearly seen in Mugen, as Watanabe had the parallels of contemporary hip-hop culture and ancient samurai in mind. Then you have Jin, who is the antithesis to Mugen. Jin is characterized as calm, stoic, intuitive, your typical Apollonian. He abides by the strict code of martial arts, involving self-restraint, meaning that he would not draw his sword unless it is for self-defense. While Jin is a ronin, meaning that he is a samurai without a lord or a master, he is still shown to abide by the code of martial arts. It is the contrast of a very orthodox, old-fashioned way of training, as Jin was later revealed to have learned his skills at a dojo, to Mugen's self-taught street-style fighting.
Your stance leaves you wide open, and your moves are totally inefficient. All in all, your fighting style is a mess.
However, despite their differences, Jin and Mugen are shown to be more alike than they are initially introduced, as they both wander through life without a definite sense of purpose, often expressing a nihilistic view towards life, sharing a hatred towards oppressive, tyrannical heads of power.
If living means bowing down to the likes of you bastards, I'd rather die on my feet with my head held high.
Well said. I agree with him.
And because this is a shonen anime, we need a love interest. Fu at first is portrayed as a typical anime love interest. She is a cheerful, socially amicable, high-spirited young woman who is a jack of all trades due to her constant changing of part-time jobs, as she starts off the series working as a waitress at a tea shop but proves to be resourceful when least expected. Fu is often overlooked as this dumb blonde type of character, but she is so much more than people give her credit for, which I do want to get more into later on. But in short, Fu almost acts like this mediator between Jin and Mugen, who at first glance were on the verge of killing each other as their differences were too much to bear. However, after Fu rescues them from a public execution in the first episode, she demands them to help her find this samurai who smells of sunflowers in order to return her favor. She tosses a coin that, if landed on tails, will mean that they forget about their fight for the time being and will accompany her on this journey of finding the sunflower samurai, which it landed on tails. So the basis of their journey, which becomes a core part of the story, was decided on a coin toss. It is also important to note that sunflowers do not have a scent, so that being the only thing to trail them by goes to foreshadow the chasing of wild goose of a journey that they will be embarking on. The main plot of Samurai Champloo centers around our three protagonists' journey of finding the samurai who smells of sunflowers, with various subplots scattered in between. It is structured similar to a road movie, with a strong focus on the journey rather than the destination itself, involving various hurdles and conflicts along the way. One of them being Mugen and Jin running off a number of times throughout the series, once realizing the outlandish nature of their journey, with Fu providing no other details.
What the hell is a sunflower anyway?
But every time they part their ways, they are brought back in the most transcendent way possible. Almost as if something existential, fated, is wanting them to make this journey and pushing them towards it no matter how much they resist.
Guess no matter how hard we try, fate's gonna keep throwing us back together!
On a side note, sunflowers or the sun in general hold sacred spiritual symbolism in Japan. In ancient times, people in Japan worshipped the goddess of the sun Amaterasu, and sunflower in general symbolized hope and faith, almost as if someone out there is telling our characters to hold on, have faith, and keep going.
A samurai who smells of sunflowers? Sunflowers don't have a scent. So wouldn't that mean that this samurai you're searching for doesn't even exist?
No, you're wrong. I know you're wrong.
After the first episode, the series delves into various subplots that occur on the way to their destination. It honestly does get kind of boring at times. I would admit this series is not perfect. But then again, it's probably just me, as going through 26 episodes in one day can get kind of dull. It can be considered fillers, but it is nowhere near as bad as Naruto's or any other anime. The fillers do serve a greater purpose of giving depth and nuance in these characters, and providing much needed lightheartedness at times in midst of all the fighting and action that keeps you at the edge of your seat. Despite being set in ancient times, this show provides contemporary commentary on political, social, and cultural issues in modern Japan, whether it be through shedding light on homosexuality, minority groups of Ryukyuan Islanders, Christians, or the turbulent trade relationships between the US and Japan, all tied down through a game of baseball. In episode titled Cosmic Collisions, Mugen, Jin, and Fu stumble upon a meteorite crater and gets conscripted into digging for treasure by Shige, who claims to be a descendant of the Heike clan. Shige claims that there were treasure hidden under this meteorite crater and promises them a portion of the treasure once found. After some strange twists and turns of events, Fu finds out that the diggers of treasure were summoned from the dead and were stuck digging there for over 500 years, thinking it has been only 5 years. After Jin takes a look at the family tree and finds out that Shige was never a part of the Heike clan, it turns the dead against him, and a meteorite strikes the area, destroying everything, creating a mushroom-shaped cloud. Hopefully I don't have to get into too much depth about the connections between Japan and mushroom-shaped clouds, but on a broader sense, this episode provides a subtle political commentary about the right-wing nationalist groups of Japan. Shige and his followers were stuck in the past. Even the idea that they are no longer relevant is infuriating to him. They held on to old ideals and beliefs, thinking it is what will lead Japan to its former glory. In reality, creating a dead-end road where its people die working for the nationalist and capitalist, only to be revived to work more. With this, Watanabe provides this subtle warning of what might happen under the right-wing powers of Japan if they're allowed to take back control again. I really like the way female characters were written in the show. Fu, for example, is portrayed as a strong, independent, brave young woman without compromising her femininity. She is kind-hearted and sweet, but assertive and stands her ground. Throughout the series, it is Fu who gets information from others, provides closure, even brings out the softer sides of characters who otherwise would not. One thing that I really loved about Fu is that she is written as her own character with her goals and aspirations that is independent of others, and not as some male conquest for love. With two other male protagonists, you would expect it to go that way, but it doesn't. Not at least in a way that I could pick up on. Rather, throughout the series, the relationship between these characters remains mostly platonic, maybe even more sibling-like, which was refreshing to see. Fu was originally voiced in Japanese by Ayako Kawasumi, who unlike most of her previous roles was instructed not to overreact in scenes where Fu is expressive, giving her a more realistic portrayal. Fu was even given the human flaw of being a bit of a glutton, as there is a recurring gag of her being temporarily fat after eating a lot, going as far as changing appearance and voice. And I will admit that Fu can be a bit boring and annoying at times, but that also plays into the realism of her character, as despite all that she's gone through, at the end of the day, she's just a 15-year-old who occasionally does dumb shit that leads to her getting rescued. But ultimately, it is Fu who rescued Mugen and Jin in the first episode and drove the main plot of this narrative of finding the samurai who smells of sunflowers, and I wished she was viewed with more depth and nuance than some dumb blonde.
You dumb broad.
As much as I love this show, there are some problematic bits that are often pointed out which are valid, like the subtle colorism, as most of the antagonists of this series are of darker complexion, or the way women are portrayed as weak and feminine. I do want to focus more on the latter point. In episode 11 titled Gamblers and Gallantry, Jin encounters Shino, a young woman who was contemplating suicide rather than being sold off to prostitution to pay off her husband's debt due to gambling. Jin spends the night with Shino after acquiring some money and then helps her escape her predicament by escorting her to a women's shelter. From a Western perspective, in occasion when there is a female lead in media other than the setting of rom-com, it is still portrayed under the male gaze, as oftentimes women need to compromise their femininity in order to be strong and capable. Hyperfemininity is villainized and reduced down to the degrading tropes of the dumb blonde or the seductive scubas. However, characters like Shino and Fu, while still maybe degrading when viewed from a Western lens, provides a more realistic portrayal of women living under a patriarchal paradigm. While they may not be out there with the men on the battlefield fighting, they are strong in their own ways and doing the best they can without defying who they are. As the story progresses, the three travelers not only get close to finding the Sunflower Samurai, but to finding and being at peace with themselves. Despite their differences, all three share trauma that they are plagued by from their own tragic past that haunt them till this day, that they must learn to make peace with in order to move on, thus promoting a message of not revenge or animosity, but of forgiveness and closure. Jin was later revealed to have slayed his own master that left him as a ronin on the run, with several of his colleagues after him in order to avenge their master's death. He wears fake glasses to disclose his identity, which is like Clark Kent level of disguise. By the end of the series, Jin not only comes at peace with himself, but forms a close bond with Mugen and Fu, allowing himself to be vulnerable.
I have been alone my entire life. You two are my first friends.
As he walks away in the final episode without his glasses, finally accepting who he is. Mugen came from the distant island of Ryoku, the land where criminals are sent to once exiled, and thus grew up knowing nothing but violence and crime. Mugen was sentenced to death by falling under the traps of his childhood acquaintance of Mukuro and Koza, which he manages to survive. After reuniting with them, Mugen falls under the same trap for the second time, and as he drowns, he draws parallels between the past and the present. The parallel scenes depict Mugen dying with his life being flashed right before his eyes, surrounded by vast flora and fauna. A red bird watches Mugen fall, along with fireflies, trees, and more birds. The juxtaposition of Mugen being on the verge of death whilst surrounded by so much life implies a sense of hope that he needed. As he survives for the second time, while weakened, Mugen still manages to avenge himself and leaves Koza behind, finally letting go. The Sunflower Samurai that Fu is so desperate to find is later revealed to be her father, who left her and her mother at a young age. After the death of her mother, Fu was looking for him for revenge. However, in the end, when Fu finally gets to meet him, fell on his deathbed, Fu has a change of heart, especially after learning the truth about her father. She decides to forgive and let go. Speaking of which, the last 3 episodes of Samurai Champloo are anything but boring. The multiple fights, storylines will have you glued to the screen, keep you at the edge of your seat. There is a fight scene on the boat in a desolated church which further reinforces the message of transcendence. The 3 end up going to the Ikizuki Island where Seizo Kazumi, the Sunflower Samurai, is. While there, they're greeted by some more antagonists. Samurai Kariya Kagetoki, who is often referred to as the Hand of God due to his skills and expertise, was appointed to kill Seizo Kazumi due to his involvement in the Shimabara Rebellion, as well as killing Jin, Mugen, and Fu. Kagetoki also teamed up with the government officials who were in the ship that exploded under Mugen, seeking revenge. The 3 get separated as they seek their own adventures, as Mugen is left with Dekibo, a former ship guard with a vicious animalistic style of fighting, and Jin with Kagetoki, who has a cold-hearted demeanor. While at the first glance this combination may seem well suited, however you can't really play fire with fire. Ultimately, both Jin and Mugen had to adapt certain traits of the opposing personalities in order to win this fight, Mugen taking a strategic approach of trapping his opponent before killing him, and Jin utilizing a suicidal strategy of leaving himself open to attack Kagetoki, a reckless move that is more of Mugen's style. Therefore, both characters come to this balance of their Apollonian and Dionysian drives, Jin being unpredictable and Mugen being precise in order to come out on top. After a week, when they finally get up and recover, the 3 decide to part their ways. Mugen and Jin decide not to fight and part on a civil note. Then Fu tells them that the coin actually landed on heads.
Decide this? by tossing this coin. If it's heads, you fight each other. But if it comes up tails, you forget about the fight and you both come with me. Are we clear on this? Tails! The thing is, it actually came up heads.
Say what?
You're kidding.
While slightly annoyed, they part on good terms, grateful for the shared memories. As Mugen walks away, he is again watched by the bird who saw him fall, implying the end of a cycle, coming full circle, completion. If by this point you're still not convinced to check out Samurai Champloo, then fine, I'll not force you to sit through 26 episodes. But at the very least, I hope you're able to appreciate the uniqueness of this anime. It is not as bright and bold as some of the newer anime that is out there, but it sure does have a unique aesthetic that is bound to hold a special place in your heart. There is none of your cliched anime stereotypes of lewd and vulgar humor, endless monologues about the importance of love and friendship, but rather it is shown by the characters being there for their friends and helping out when needed. Aside from everything that I talked about, Samurai Champloo holds a very special place in my heart. As a child, I watched a handful of episodes, and this is something I talked about on my channel before, but I did not have a good childhood. Most of my childhood I spent trapped in my abusive home, developing a really strong sense of imagination that helped me escape my troubled reality. I always resonated with stories about misfits, outcasts from different backgrounds coming together for the shared goal, going on a journey full of adventures and self-discovery. And that really all it is to Samurai Champloo. 3 misfits coming together for a shared goal, allowing me to vicariously live through them, learning about themselves and the world. And the music. I don't know if it's just me, but for me, the music makes up half of the experience of any media that I consume. Samurai Champloo arguably has one of the best soundtracks of anime. The music was composed predominantly by 4 artists, the late Nujabes, Fat John, Shuji, and Force of Nature, to compose a chill hip-hop type beat, which would be considered as lo-fi hip-hop in the current age. Nujabes is often considered to be the father or grandfather of lo-fi, as the bridge between anime and hip-hop, creating the lo-fi genre as we know it today, can be attributed to him. Watanabe once said in an interview that the composer for Nujabes was the first name that came to mind when thinking of creating music for Samurai Champloo. Nujabes mainly drew inspiration from jazz and golden era hip-hop with sampling beats. His style can be described as melancholic yet uplifting. The intro song to Samurai Champloo, Battle Cry featuring Shinichiro, sets the mood of what is ahead, depicting a bleak world of a lone samurai in a dog-eats-dog world, where one is either a predator or a prey, where one must keep fighting to survive, yet also learn to grow and love. In contrast to the actress song Shiki no Uta, translating to Song of the Seasons, performed by Minmi on the vocals and Nujabes in the beat, allows for a sense of reflection, for you to ultimately let it go, move on. As seasons change, life goes on. While I myself am a huge fan of Nujabes' work, I was introduced to it through Samurai Champloo like many others. I really wish the other 3 artists were given more recognition. Everyone involved in this project were allowed complete artistic freedom, resulting in a masterpiece. However, currently Nujabes is the only one people think of when asked about Samurai Champloo's music. But maybe it's because it's dead. And we all know that the art's value goes up exponentially after the artist's dead. There has been various talks about Season 2 of Samurai Champloo coming out by the end of this year, but none are from any official sources. While myself and many others were initially disappointed after somewhat of an underwhelming ending to such an action-packed anime, now I don't think I even want a Season 2. Don't get me wrong, I will definitely watch it if there were an official Season 2, but I have my doubts of how much it could live up to Season 1. Firstly, without Nujabes, I'm not sure if it will be the same. Like I said, music makes up like half of the experience. Even if the other artists were able to make it work, The bittersweet ending of season 1 is representative of how life is. Since the first episode, I kind of guessed that Samurai Champloo will be one of those anime that will bless us with just one season. As the three part their ways and go on to live their own separate lives, it is less of a happily ever after and more of a to be continued, which is an accurate portrayal of life. Life goes on. It's less about the destination and more about the journey, the memories we make, the experiences we have. That makes us who we are. But then again, it is one of those things that only time will tell.
What's up with her? She's sentimental. She's what kind of mental?